let's do it. Ready?
Let's go.
Okay. Welcome to the webinar today. Today we're going to chat about fat adapted from an athletic perspective, why you would probably want to consider doing that, and intermittent fasting as well, just a little bit, and the benefits, the pros and cons, the dirty little deets, the nitty gritty, like what does it really mean to be fat adapted? Why should we do it? What can we do to screw it up? How can we sustain it? What are the benefits, like that? So let's start. So Anna, for those of you that don't know, Anna is amazing. She is
Thanks.
an incredible person. I've been lucky enough to know her for a few years. And how long have I known you now?
Oh my gosh. Let's see. Probably.
It's been a little while, right? Like
absolutely, maybe at least 5 to 6 years. Yeah, lucky you.
5 to 6 years, people. All right, so I've known her for quite a while. She is a pro cyclist, which is awesome, right? So it's always good to know somebody that has that kind of experience. So Anna has, I would say, the last year or two, she's been, in my opinion, she's really shifted a lot of her coaching and correct me if I'm wrong, but she's been shifting a lot of her coaching and a lot of her like focus from a nutritional perspective in her Spark Systems business into really testing and sampling and trying out and breaking down things like fat adapted and intermittent fasting. So from an athletic point of view, I don't know of anyone who's got like a stronger sense of personal experience, as well as all of the athletes that she works with. You know, there's quite a few of them that have also tried this. So we're going to really get some good, I think, real life examples today with Anna from Spark Systems. Also, huge just point of fact, what we talk about today is really hard to grasp and get a hold of if you don't actually know your own body's like metabolism. So you have to know what your body does, and your body's your body. So you do you, we do us. You know, like everyone has to be like yourself or whatever, but like you're gonna have to know what your thresholds are, what your zone 1, zone 2 is, what, you know, all of that stuff. So just a huge caveat, like what we talk about is fantastic today, but step 1 would probably always be make sure you know what your metabolic rates and testing and all that stuff is, right? What your zones are, and you do that. Also, you know, there's places I guess you can go do that, lots of them, but my favorite my favorite is with Anna. Yeah, Anna is rad at doing that. All right, so let's start. What is fat adapted? Like seriously, like no fat jokes. What is fat adapted?
Well, let's start a little bit before we dive into what does it mean to be fat adapted. But fat adaptation is being able to utilize and liberate your fat stores. And so it is, if you are fat adapted or not fat adapted, is going to be dictated by your daily nutrition. So before this webinar, we actually received even some pre-questions, and a lot of the questions that I was reading kept talking a lot about exercise, asking more about exercise and being fat adapted, as opposed to looking at actually your daily nutrition and how optimizing your daily nutrition is going to help you become fat adapted much more quickly. And also one other thing that I would really like to touch on is that 75% of the game is going to be nutrition. 25% would be exercise when we're talking about becoming fat adapted. So with all of that, let's think about what the standard American diet looks like.
Oh, wait.
Oh.
I actually know what it looks like. Sorry for that noise of the seat. All right. Some of you have seen this before. This is the standard American diet.
Oh, gosh. McDonald's.
This is a month and a half old. And if you can't see very clearly, it looks like you can. Like, it looks like the day.
Oh, my gosh.
Like, it's, listen.
Oh, my gosh. And that is going into people's bodies.
That's a double cheeseburger, y'all.
Oh, gosh. So essentially what Ben just showed you was what the standard American diet looks like. And it's very high in processed foods and a lot of refined carbohydrate. So what happens with our metabolism is that our bodies will select what is present. Okay, so if we have a lot of carbohydrate present with those refined carbohydrates and sugars, then our bodies will select that for fuel, right? On the other hand, if we have more fat present in our cells, then our body will select fat for fuel.
All right, can I interject for 1 second?
Yes.
All right. This, just like more globally or conceptually, for some of you that are really, really new to this, fat adaptation is not like a diet. It's
Nope.
not like some fad thing. It's not a supplement. Sometimes it's helpful, I think, to talk about what it's not. It's not pills.
Nope.
It is a way of being. It's a lifestyle. It is a way, and this is where she's going now. It is a way of teaching your body to intentionally select fat as your primary source of fuel, whether you're an athlete or not. It's just simply, I like to not be tired. I like to not be foggy. I like to be clear-minded. I like to, all those things. And most of us will know, like after Thanksgiving, for example, how awful we all feel. Well, most of that's because of just like, the pure gluttony of the day. But yeah, for everything from, I would suggest the carbs, of course, to even potentially, like the GMO, all that stuff.
Our natural human metabolic state, we were built to select fat. But what has happened is that through the standard American diet and all of these highly processed carbohydrates, we now select carbohydrate and glycogen for fuel first, as opposed to being able to liberate those fat stores. So in our bodies right now, we can store 12 to 1,500 calories of carbohydrate, or in the glycogen. We can store that in our liver and in our muscles. But fat, we can store 50 to 80K of fat in our cells. So as you can see, our bodies, we were built to naturally select fat for fuel. But due to our daily nutrition being high in refined carbohydrate and sugar, we now are selecting that for fuel.
So when I wake up in the morning, I want my body to burn fat. I say that because I'm also a little bit chubby. So,
Buddha.
Thanks for that. Yeah, so I think there's people, in fact, I know for a fact that there's people out here today that are listening, and others that will listen to this later and download it, that are probably wanting to know how they can lose a little weight. And just to be super clear, everyone, fat adaptation as a way of living and for athletes is for sure like going to help you lose weight. It just does. But I want to wake up in the morning and I want to be able to use fat as fuel. So what do I do?
Okay, so first what you do is when you wake up, you need to ask yourself, am I hungry?
Yes. Usually.
You're hungry? Okay, so start there. And what you should do is go ahead and have a glass of water.
Oh, thanks.
Have a glass of water and then ask yourself again, am I really hungry? And begin to realize, do you want to eat? Because every single day for your entire life, when you woke up in the morning, you ate breakfast straight away, whether or not you were hungry. It's what we call habitual eating, right? So it's just you've got yourself into this habit of eating right when you wake up in the morning. Instead, ask yourself that question, am I really hungry? And then go from there. And if you are, then you can eat, sure. But if you eat something that morning, make sure that it's something a little bit higher in fat. We're going to be a lot more satiated off of fat as well. It's going to somewhat stay with us longer. But when I'm talking about fat, I'm talking about good fats. So your fish, your avocados, your nuts, your nut butters, your eggs, your bacon, and I talk about uncured bacon, right? So nothing processed. Doing some high quality cheeses. Those are going to be your best options. And it's really, I feel like, very easy in the morning too, to find those types of foods. Everyone wants bacon and eggs, first thing in the morning, throw a little avocado on there. Oh, delicious.
Delicious.
Yep, absolutely. And maybe if you wake up in the morning and the first thing you want to do is have that cup of coffee, that's that's fine. You can do that if you want. You can even throw a little heavy whipping cream in there that is very high in fat. You could throw some butter in there, you know, that whole bulletproof coffee thing. Some people love that. I'm not really bothered. I don't really care to wake up and have that, but some people do. Some people like it. But first thing I want you to do is wake up and ask yourself, am I really hungry? Do I need to eat right now? Or am I just so accustomed to eating right when I wake up that I'm gonna eat?
So yeah, I like that. When I first wake up, I need to ask myself if I'm even hungry. But let me back up just one more time because I just realized two things. One housekeeping item is if you have questions while we're listening, by the way, make sure on the right hand side of your screen, you'll see a little spot and you can type your question inside there. It'll actually pop up for us and one of the two of us can type an answer and we can reply and post all the answers to everybody. Okay, housekeeping done. Two, just again, maybe I think from more of a global conceptual perspective, fat adapting is essentially just teaching our bodies, just a little recap here so that we move on, to use fat as a fuel. And the reason we want to do that is because fat's like really efficient, readily available. So the skinniest of the skinny still has like a bajillion kilojoules of fat locked away in their cells. And so enough to fuel an athlete forever. So from a personal perspective, just for some of you out there, and Anna can chime in as well. You know, I've been dabbling with this for quite a few months now, and fat adaption is not ketosis. Like we'll address that. I think we'll address that a little later. You know, I get asked that a lot. Right? Does that mean you're in ketosis? The answer is no. I'm not in ketosis. In fact, I'm probably not even anywhere near ketosis, but it is absolutely a low carb way of eating. And so I'm teaching my body to burn fat as fuel. The benefit for me that I've noticed in my personal cycling and my personal races and events, and it doesn't have to be long stuff. It's just that the long stuff is more impressive, right? Because of how far you go with how little you eat. So recently we went down to Tucson and we rode our bikes from Gilbert, Arizona. We went down to Tucson. We rode up to the top of Mount Lemmon. It's like 100 and I think from here to there and then back down to the bottom of Lemmon is like 170 or 175 miles. So that ride that we just did a few weeks ago, like 3-4 weeks ago, something like that, I did fasted. So I woke up we started the ride at 3. I woke up, I didn't have any breakfast and I didn't eat pasta or anything the night before. I had a salad for dinner. I woke up, I did the ride fasted. I did it on just water and branched chain amino acids that I personally like to take. They're no calorie kind of powder branched chain amino acid I like. Couple of nut butters, a couple of pickle juice bottles for salt and stuff. And then in Tucson, a good buddy of ours drove up with a box of donuts.
Oh gosh, there you go.
So I had one donut.
Wow.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yep, insulin through the roof. Here we go.
And that was like 100 miles into the ride though. So I'm feeling pretty okay. Like after 100 miles, I could probably eat a donut. Okay, so the best part is though, of course, like for me, that is a zone 1, zone 2 ride at a pretty decent clip. For those of you that ride with us, you'll know. But that's the reason why fat adaptation is so nice. Like I'm not taking in like 300 calories an hour of, you name it, goos, gels. Carbo Rocket, for example, is like my favorite sugary carbo drink. If I had to have one, look at her. But the nice thing,
that Carbo Rocket.
the nice thing is when I'm fat adapted, I don't have to have it. So
well, here's the deal though.
I could do a long ride like that and not ever even take it.
Did you ever feel in a panic like, oh my gosh, if I don't eat, I'm gonna die?
No.
Or I'm gonna bonk. Did you ever get to, so that's that sustainable energy that you have when you're able to liberate fat for fuel, you know? And so it is not that you don't have to have all of that carbohydrate. You don't have to have all of that glycogen being put back in your body, all of that sugar being put back in your body all the time, because you are able to operate off of your fat stores.
Right. Yeah. So I'll click on some of those questions in a second while Anna's talking in a minute. But yeah, one of the reasons that I really, really, really love fat adaptation is because as long as you're also doing, and this will answer some questions that we got before, and we can talk about it now or later, but as long as you're also doing your training on the bike, fat adaptation is geared towards lower intensities for the most part.
Yes and no. So our goal would be to have you be able to utilize fat stores up to higher intensities, right? So it doesn't start out in the beginning being that, say that you come in and you get a metabolic test. And during that metabolic test, we're going to identify what we call your metabolic efficiency point. And that metabolic efficiency point is actually that point in which you change over from being able to utilize fat to utilizing carbohydrate. And the only way to know that point is to actually have it measured through metabolic testing. So once you establish that point in which you are changing over from utilizing fat to utilizing carbohydrate, then we look at what is that heart rate. So say that my metabolic efficiency heart rate is 140 beats per minute. So I know when I'm out riding that up until 140 beats per minute, I'm utilizing fat for fuel. And when I start to go over 140 beats per minute, and now I'm utilizing more of those glycogen stores. Am I going to blast through them at a rapid rate? I won't at 145 beats per minute, 146. But what the point of the ride, if it is to be an aerobic ride where I am utilizing fat, then I would bring it back down. I would bring it back down to below 140 beats per minute so I can make sure I'm maximizing that fat utilization. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So one other misconception is that if you need to eat fat to burn fat, and that's not the case. You actually eat fat to displace eating carbohydrate.
What do you mean displace?
So in order,
eat this instead of that because I'll feel fuller.
Because you feel full.
Got it.
Right. Anybody ever experience whenever they eat a donut, right? You wake up in the morning and you eat that donut. You are starving Marvin, like within 30 minutes, maybe if you even made it an hour, right?
Yeah, but that donut is so good.
Oh my God.
Yeah, baby.
So you want to, yeah.
Yes, you're right though.
That Buddha belly.
There is a weird cyclical. I just had a bowl of cereal instead of eggs or something, and now all of a sudden I'm hungry again 30 minutes later.
Absolutely. And so what happens is when you eat that donut, you have an insulin response. Every time you eat anything, eat or drink anything except pure water, you have an insulin response. And when you have sugar or refined grains and carbohydrate, that insulin response is very abrupt. It's very much of a spike. So what happens is when insulin goes up, fat burning is turned off, by the way. Okay. So you introduce in refined grains and carbohydrate, insulin goes up. It's a very abrupt angle here. And so what happens is after you stop eating, insulin's going to start dropping down, right? When you eat fat, you have an insulin response, but it is very low. It's very short, right? If anything at all. And so what that means is that insulin can drop down very, very quickly because it didn't really have that big spike, Does that make sense? And so what happens is when you are fat adapted, then you're not having these huge insulin spikes and drops and spikes and drops during the day, right? Because what we try to do is we try to eat 3 complete meals a day, and knowing that if we only eat 2, we're going to be okay. It's okay sometimes when you're fat adapted to be able to skip a meal if you want to. It's all right. You're not going to die. You have infinite fat stores in your body. And your body will be just fine. It's not going to go into starvation mode. Now, if you decide that you want to do that for days upon days upon days upon days, still, you're going to be able to liberate those fat stores for days upon days upon days if you want. But that's not, as an athlete, it's probably not the direction that you want to go. So we'll get into talking about a little bit of intermittent fasting in a little bit, and this will make it'll make more sense, but I won't go there just yet.
So I have a question for you.
Okay.
And this is a question one of the panelists posted, and I thought it was a good one. So let's answer it from a fat adapted perspective and a non-fat adapted perspective.
Okay.
When you're done with a workout, so when all of us are finished riding our bikes and we're like exhausted, or whatever it is you're doing, running, whatever, running stupid, you should be riding your bike, but whatever. So when you're out there exercising and you're finished, what's the post-workout routine in terms of fuel and eating a meal and, you know, the ratio of protein, fats, and carbs, like the old, like I better down a chocolate milk real fast because I only have a certain window before it doesn't absorb anymore. And, you know, like, can we debunk some of that? Or is that true? And we better all hurry up and drink the chocolate milk right afterwards? Like, what's the deal?
So
fat adapted, non-fat adapted answer.
We are actually moving away from having that window of, you know, it used to be about, you have 30 minutes, you know, right when you finish that workout, you've got 30 minutes to replenish all of those glycogen stores. Well, what happens if that ride that you did, you went for 90 minutes and it was a very aerobic ride, right? Well, you may not have even tapped into those glycogen stores that much. You know, you may have actually been able to just utilize some fat for fuel on that ride. And so after that ride, you don't need to replace a bunch of stuff that you didn't really utilize. But what you do need to do is go ahead, have a complete meal. Have a complete meal. When we're talking about macros, maybe in that complete meal, I would say have a little bit higher fat, right? So maybe even 50% of that meal is fat. About 20 to 25 can be protein, and about 25 can be carbohydrate. Okay. But when we talk about the carbohydrate too, let's make sure that that we're talking about the right types of carbohydrate. Okay. So we really, if you are in a state of trying to become fat adapted, getting some of those grains and refined sugars out would be awesome. And also the processed food. So even thinking about, a lot of people I know are really into shakes, and they're really into using powders and stuff.
Dude, I love milkshakes.
No need to, yeah.
Are we talking about milkshakes?
That's why you get that shake, right? Yeah, that milkshake brings all the, anyway.
So in my personal experience, I feel like from fat adapting as best as I have been able to do it, at least, like I'm for sure not like, you know, an example of how to do it, but
yeah, you are. Absolutely you are. I saw those pictures that you showed of how what can you put those up?
You guys ready?
Oh my gosh, get ready.
Let's
this is before Ben met me, and then after he met me. Look at that.
It might have been a year or two before I met her.
Oh, but then we really got it dialed, right?
Yeah.
Oh, love it. That's so great, Ben.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
So, look at this.
Oh, there's that Buddha belly.
How about that right there? Is that a donut? Oh. That's an apple. I was making good choices back then. Oh.
Like, what is this thing?
All right. So, in all seriousness, in my personal experience, when we're fat adapted, I don't feel like I have to replenish afterwards. And in fact, I'm not really even hungry after rides. And I remember the day when I would finish a ride, and you hear people say this all the time, like I exercised so that I can eat, or whatever, right?
I'm starving. I have to eat, and that's
really, really bad mentality. Really dangerous one. Particularly if that person struggles with weight, like there's a really good chance that they're focused more on and inappropriately on how much they're consuming and how much they're consuming right after they work out, like, and they over they're a little more generous in their estimates of
Mm-hmm.
what they burned in terms of calories, and
Right.
particularly the source of calories, right? So they'll do like a 30 to 60-minute workout, and they'll go eat like a whole pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I gotta recover, or whatever. So, and I remember feeling that way, and I remember making those decisions, and I remember not losing weight doing that. So,
Well, remember it, everyone would say it's all about calories in, calories out, you know? So if I went and ate that pizza and then I went and rode afterwards, that negated that pizza. It doesn't work that way. Get that out of your mind. It's not calories in, calories out. It's not eat less, move more, any of that. No, it has nothing to do with any of that. And so kind of get that out of your head. It's all about the timing of your nutrition and the quality of your nutrition. So that is what was there another question over there that
no, that was it. So that was that one. And there's a couple more that I'm gonna pull up, but let's.
So what happens though when as you are if you are someone that isn't fat adapted and you're trying to get there, whenever you finish that ride, you may actually be pretty hungry. And so it's okay to eat, but just like Ben said, you don't need to you just need to eat a balanced meal. Don't need to overeat, don't need to think, okay, I did all of this, I should be able to eat and drink whatever I want. It's not that.
Yeah, same with carb loading, by the way, which didn't come up yet, but
Mm-hmm.
like you don't have to have like all this pasta the night before a big
No.
race, because if you're eating appropriately, then your body's gonna convert from the few carbs you're eating exactly what it needs to replenish your liver and muscle glycogen storage with. You
Exactly.
don't have to do
So,
like a bunch of pasta and all this stuff for days before.
right,
So Ironman
right.
Texas is this weekend.
Okay.
My dear wife, she's racing it, as well as a bunch of friends.
Oh,
And I guarantee, like the night before, right at the athlete dinner, there's going to be people like
pounding the pasta.
just pounding the pasta,
Oh my
right?
gosh.
And what do those people feel like the next morning? Let's be honest,
Oh.
right? What do? They wake up going, "Oh, I'm bloated."
And they are. They're so
I've been there.
they're so
Oh
swollen.
yeah, you can't pay me to do that anymore. Like, there's no such thing as carb loading that feels good. Like, if you're eating like you're supposed to, your body naturally fills up those.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so how you look at this is that your daily nutrition will support your training. So there doesn't need to be anything that you are changing in
Right.
order to before or
Right.
after that workout that needs to be any different. Just continue on. Continue on with what you are normally doing. And if you do come in and get a MET test and we're able to establish exactly what your energy requirements are we would do a resting metabolic test to determine resting energy expenditure coupled with an active metabolic test, so we would know exactly what you're utilizing for fuel when you're exercising. And now we can actually put together what that daily nutrition needs to look like to support you on rest days, on training days, on race days.
Yeah, I like that, because there's a
everything.
difference between a rest day, a training day, a high intensity training day, and a race day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all of those days can be so different, and so knowing what you eat on those days is critical.
Mm-hmm.
Off the bike nutrition is like infinitely more important than on the bike nutrition.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
infinitely more important than on the bike nutrition. So fat adaptation doesn't occur on the bike, but a lot of the benefits obviously do, right? But there are benefits outside of exercise, which we should address really quickly. So what are some of the benefits to fat adapting? I'll name some that I feel that I've experienced, and then you fill in the rest real quick.
Okay.
Like clarity of thought.
Yes.
Okay.
Higher mental acuity.
So like
Perfect.
it is like the nice little magic pill, so to speak, that you like. Wasn't there like a Wall Street movie where they were taking pills and all of a sudden they were like, these
Oh.
business guys were like thinking on this higher level or something? Does anybody know what I'm talking about out there? Anyways, there's like a Wall Street movie and they're taking this pill. I think Leonardo DiCaprio, maybe.
Oh, Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever.
Oh,
I honestly don't remember. All I know
Anybody?
is someone
help us out.
Someone help us out. Yeah, yeah. But I feel that way so one of the biggest things that I appreciate is the mental clarity, and I think my wife appreciates that too. That I'm not sometimes as foggy as I used to be. I sleep better.
Oh, yes.
Like, I feel better. I don't sweat as much
Hmm.
at night.
Hmm.
I think.
Core body temperature maybe stays a little bit lower.
I'm a sweater.
Hmm.
Yeah, at night.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
I wake up drenched. Yeah.
Hmm.
Anyways, and then on the bike, of course, it's like the difference between fueling a car up with like mud or rocket fuel, right? Like it's
Sure.
just like your body is using a much cleaner, more efficient fuel, and so you just feel good. Like
And you have that sustained energy throughout the day.
Throughout
so
the
you
day,
don't
not
have
just
these
on a ride.
highs,
Yeah.
highs and lows throughout the day.
Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The sleep component is massive. And so one thing that I do, and I know, like I said earlier, we will move into some of the time restricted stuff, but one thing that I want to touch on is I want everyone to pick an hour of the day to stop eating by. Because what that is going to affect is actually melatonin production. And melatonin is produced in your gut. And melatonin is produced, the amount that is produced is actually determined by two things. One is light and the other is metabolism. And so for all of you out there that maybe have kids or don't have kids, it doesn't matter. When you get home at night and you have your dinner, make sure that you're starting to get the lights dimmed and starting to get those tablets out of your face, get the iPhones out of your face, get that artificial light that's coming in. Try to start getting that out of your life as much as possible so that melatonin can begin to be produced, okay? So say that melatonin is starting, say that you finish eating at 6:30 p.m. Melatonin is starting to be produced. The lights are dimmed. Everything's getting kind of quiet. Everybody's starting to calm down a bit at night. And then 9 p.m. rolls around and you go, oh, it's 9 p.m. I typically have a piece of chocolate or I have a snack. And so all of a sudden,
or I have a whole gallon of ice cream.
Yeah, I have some donuts. So, or you had that shake. Remember back when you were doing that shake late at night? And I was like, what? You're like, oh, dang. I forgot about that.
That's okay.
Sorry.
I'm good. Yeah, I love my shakes. My protein shakes.
I'm like, what are you drinking a protein shake for?
I put kale in there.
At 9 p.m. at night.
Almond milk. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I remember that day that you told me that. He was like, I've been doing so great. And I was like, you better not.
Oh, I still do.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, tell me, what do you eat? And then he gets to the end. He's like, well, and then I had these protein shakes and I'm like, oh dear. I put a
little ice cream in it? No, I don't. Okay.
Okay, back to the melatonin. So what happens is you had started producing some melatonin and then 9 p.m. rolled around. You introduced ice cream in or food in general. And now your body goes, oh, you've given me energy. I should be active, right? Well, it shunts the production of that melatonin. So you may fall asleep at 10 p.m., but you're going to wake up. You're not going to make it through the entire night because you have not produced enough melatonin to get you through the full circadian rhythms, right? To get you through the night.
That's a big word.
So you will wake up. Talking about, you can think of it as your sleep cycles, right?
Circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
I can't even spell it. Yeah, sleep cycle's better. Yeah, okay, so yeah, those are some of the benefits of fat adapting. And let's go through some of the questions real quick because I know we're already at quite a bit of time, but then we'll jump into some intermittent fasting. But one of the questions here, and this is a good one because we talked about what fat adapting is. We talked about some of the benefits and stuff. I don't really know of any cons, by the way, so we're just going to skip over that section for right now.
Okay.
Like, there really isn't that many disadvantages, if any. So one of the big questions is how do we become fat adapted? And we kind of started to address that by saying the very first thing you do when you wake up is ask yourself if you're hungry. And if you can skip a meal, for example, skip a meal or at least ride fasted. Like I can't remember the last time I had breakfast before I had a ride, no matter how long or how hard the ride or race was for that matter. Like I've ridden and raced and trained fasted for like probably 4 to 6 months now, like or and more. Like
some people that may be frightening to them because they've never done it. You know, they wake up and they automatically have food and they've never done a fasted ride. So in order to give it a go and just pick a ride that's going to be 1 hour in duration, it's going to be very low intensity, and just try to do it without eating anything before you go
or during. If it's
Absolutely,
or if
right.
it's 1 hour, just take water.
Just take a bottle of water. That's all you need. And then when you get home, if you are hungry, then eat breakfast and eat a complete meal, and make sure that that meal is a little bit higher in fat, though, whenever you're eating when you get home.
So how does that reconcile? This is one of the questions we need to answer. How does that reconcile with I've grown up hearing that when I wake up, I need to stoke the fire to get the metabolism going. Like breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
Right.
Ready, set, go. How do you answer that?
So let's kind of get that out of your mind, and let's start thinking about doing some intuitive eating. Ask yourself if you are hungry, okay? And if you are, then you should eat. If you are not hungry, then you should not eat, okay? It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that it's the most, you could have that breakfast at 10 a.m. and it's still breakfast. If you want to consider it the most important meal of the day, that's totally fine. You can do that.
It's more like brunch, but yeah.
Okay, brunch, right? Then you have brunch. Brunch is the most important meal of the day. But really, going through the day and just instead of eating all day, every day, like this whole concept of eating 5 or 6 small meals a day, let's get away from that. Our metabolism really needs to rest. We need insulin to be quiet for periods of time during the day. So say that you wake up and you do have breakfast and insulin rises depending upon what you eat. So say that you wake up and you eat a bowl of oatmeal with maybe some nuts in it and maybe some berries. Okay, so you have an insulin response and insulin goes up. Okay, and like I was saying earlier, since it is a pretty high carbohydrate breakfast, insulin's going to rise quite high. And then it's going to start coming down. And then you say, oh, you know what? Since I ate such a high carbohydrate breakfast, I'm actually pretty hungry right now. So I'm going to eat a snack. And so you grab a banana. Insulin goes way up, right? Because now you've introduced in carbohydrate, something with some sugar, fruit. Okay. Insulin goes back up and then it begins to start dropping down. And then, oh, it's lunchtime. I should eat again. Boom. Insulin goes back up. Depending upon what you eat. Say that you ate a turkey sandwich and maybe a bag of chips. So insulin goes right back up. Insulin starts to drop down. Oh, you know what? Since I ate such a big carbohydrate lunch, I need to have a snack. Okay, I'll eat an apple. Boom, insulin back up. So what happens is insulin staying elevated all day actually causes insulin resistance. Okay, so insulin causes insulin resistance, and that is diabetes. Okay, so better is to have breakfast if you want. Insulin goes up, and maybe that breakfast, though, is something that's higher in fat, so maybe it's eggs and bacon. Insulin goes up, it starts to come down. We're not hungry, so there's no need to eat. So we let insulin be quiet. And then say that lunchtime does roll around. It's like, oh, okay, I think I may want to eat something. And so we eat maybe a salad with some chicken on it and maybe some eggs in there and maybe some nuts and avocado, put some good olive oil on it. Insulin goes up, but it still doesn't go that high because there's not very much carbohydrate even in that salad, even though lettuce and stuff is carbohydrate. But it doesn't have such a big impact on insulin. Insulin comes back down. We have dinner. Insulin goes up. Now it starts to come back down and it rests. And now we have the entire night, if we stop eating right there, for insulin to be quiet and actually be able to allow us to utilize fat, our stored fat, for fuel. And you can use it all night long. All night.
I love it.
Yeah, makes sense, right? But the moment that night time at 9 p.m. you introduce food back in, and especially if it is something higher in carbohydrate, then your body, one, you're going to shunt the production of that melatonin, so you're not going to sleep through the night. But two, your body through the night is not going to be able to liberate that fat for fuel because it's going to be metabolizing that carbohydrate that you ate before bed.
And so transitioning just a little bit.
Okay.
While I'm answering these questions,
should I help you with those?
Yeah. Like I'm answering the ones that I feel good with, and then I'll ask
Okay.
you some of those ones. I'm like, but yeah, here's the thing. So, fat adaptation is not just for like athletes, right?
No,
Like
it's for
obviously,
everyone.
like this, if we could just change the way we see our bodies, if we can adopt a paradigm of our body is literally a living like machine that we need to take care of. I know this is like so tree huggerish, and I don't mean to come off that way, but like then you're gonna want to invest in it. You're gonna want to take care of it. You're gonna want to fuel it. For
Yep.
example, let's say like you saved all your money up and you bought like a $500,000 car because you're an idiot and you think that that's cool. So you buy a $500,000 car. You're not gonna put like the 87 octane gas in it.
Exactly.
Like you're gonna put the premium gas in it.
Yeah.
So with our bodies, it's that way. And
I think about, I like your gas tank analogy, and actually my husband really likes that too. But I like to use it a little bit differently, and I think about
The
fat.
fridge.
Fat. Well, we could talk about the fridge,
I love
but fat being more of like diesel fuel. And you can go forever on your fat store. So you can go forever on diesel. You don't have to fill up that tank that often, right? Because you can just use diesel, right? So, but carbohydrates are like rocket fuel. And you said rocket fuel earlier, and I understand where you're coming from, but think about carbohydrates as rocket fuel. We have they're kind of like your reserves. You burn through them very, very quickly. They are a very quick burning fuel. And once they're gone, you're not getting them back unless you sit there and try to inhale a bunch of carbohydrate. And even then, your body is not going to be able to utilize that carbohydrate right then just as quickly as you think it is. But if you stay utilizing fat for fuel, then you can go forever on those. So what we want to try to do during this fat adaptation period is we want to essentially that MEP, that metabolic efficiency point, we want to move that to the right. And when I say move it to the right, that means that we want to be able to utilize fat for longer periods of time and even at higher intensities. Okay.
So how do you change that metabolic efficiency point?
Okay.
Your famous MEP. How do you get that to move to the right? So how do you take a zone 1, zone 2 effort, essentially, if we're going to put it in cycling terms, and say I'm basically burning fat in zone 1, zone 2.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone does,
mm-hmm.
essentially, right?
If they have that, if they're able to utilize that fat for fuel. Not everybody.
As soon as I said that, I realized that that's not true.
Not everybody.
Some people burn carbs
away.
Right when they start pedaling. They're zone 1 and they're burning carbs.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're resting basically, and they're still, their body is still looking for a carb source.
Absolutely.
That tells me their off the bike nutrition is super high in carbs.
All the time.
Is that right?
Yep.
And obviously they're on the bike is. If your off the bike nutrition is off, your on the bike nutrition is going to be screwed up too. That's pretty much how it goes in my experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So how can you move it to the right?
How do you move it
to the right? So your metabolic efficiency point is actually dictated by two things. One is going to be your daily nutrition. If your daily nutrition is a bit higher in fat, then you're actually going to be able to utilize more fat for fuel, only because you're not taking on a lot of carbohydrate, right? You've got fat present in your cells to be able to be liberated. The second thing is your exercise intensities. And so being able to utilize, we typically think we utilize fat at lower intensities and we utilize more carbohydrate at higher intensities. But we can make that transition. We can move that cursor, that metabolic efficiency point, to the right just by increasing our good fat intake and our daily nutrition and exercising at those lower intensities. But if you just had to do one or the other, choose the daily nutrition and make it higher in fat. Again, I will come back to 75% is going to come from daily nutrition and 25% will come from exercise. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay, good.
Okay, there's a couple other questions. Let's because we want to talk about how to become fat adapted.
Okay.
Like how do we do that? short answer is you start with getting tested. Hands
Mm-hmm.
down, you get tested so you know your own unique body's metabolic
Well,
rates
you
and
know what your
efficiencies.
yeah,
You
you know
know
what your
where
metabolism
you
looks
know where
like.
you're burning. So from the cycling perspective, just to put it into cyclist perspective, because I think most people listening are cyclists, but runners, triathletes, whatever, from a cycling perspective, getting tested means, for me at least, I know when I average X heart rate, then I mean I literally have the formula right after
Mm-hmm.
testing with you. If I average X heart rate, then I'm burning X amount of grams of carbs and X amount of grams of fat for fuel.
Mm-hmm.
I love knowing that because then I can intentionally know that after 6 hours of riding my bike down to like Tucson and Lemon or whatever, that I can go, yeah, I still have enough glycogen. I don't have
Yeah.
to.
But
I
then
don't
you
have to eat
also
something.
know what to replenish with if you need to, right? So
Right.
it's not just a guessing game anymore. It's
Yeah.
not just, hey, everybody, go have a chocolate milk and you'll be good. No, you come in and get tested. We'll tell you exactly what you need to replenish with after your workouts.
Yeah. And one of the other things that I think's kind of important with saying about knowing when to replenish is you don't have to replenish your fats. So
Right.
like especially if you still are chubby like me, I can go for, a long ride on one day and not have to come back and replenish a bunch of fats. If we talk about replenishing and fat adapting, just know we're almost always talking about knowing if you should take that carb or not
Mm-hmm.
on that ride. If you should take that
Yeah.
goo, if you should take that gel, if whatever your carb is,
There's
so
a great product out there too that we work really well with this company called UCAN, UCAN, and actually I will put a link up that you can get a discount if you want to buy it. They have a product called Superstarch, and it doesn't spike insulin. So when you're out on some of these longer rides and you do need to take in calories, I would recommend utilizing this Superstarch. If it's going to be a ride that you are going to be out there for quite a long time, plus you're going to utilize maybe some higher intensity training, then take a bottle of the UCAN with you for that sustained energy. But then also you could have maybe a bottle of Scratch or something that maybe did have some simple sugar in it if you were going to be doing some high intensity. And that way you have a little bit of both. You've got the sustained energy, but then two, you can replenish any glycogen stores that you have lost if you're out there for over 3 hours. And they're like in a race. If I was going to do a stage race, I would have a bottle of UCAN on my bike, and I would probably have a bottle of I like Scratch, but
UCAN is in my opinion, you can throw up as well if you have it.
whatever.
Oh,
Yeah.
I hate it, but some people like it. So
Yeah,
it's good.
yeah, give it a go. Give
Yeah.
it a go. It really is like there's no insulin spikes with UCAN, and that's very important when you're out there. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But what we tried to do, did I talk about having metabolic flexibility? I know I was telling you about it. I was talking to you about it earlier,
We're going
but
to talk about that here in just a minute,
okay,
and we're going to wrap
sorry.
up soon too. But
Okay, let's do it.
one of the questions we need an answer to is just short, real quick, and I'll post it up to everybody. Is there a good book or reference for meal plans that are high in fat?
Oh, let's see. Cookbooks. Actually, you should follow us on Instagram, Sparks Metabolic Kitchen, and Clint actually posts a ton of recipes that are higher in fat. But also, if you come in and get met tested, we will actually give you a meal plan that will tell you exactly what your macros need to look like, the exact foods that you need to eat for your metabolism. And we've also started putting together quite a few recipes. So we can share that with people. I'll have to think about a good cookbook, though, that would be a little bit higher in fat. Let me get back to you on that.
Yeah, we can post something later on that one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so we're going to keep rolling through some of these questions that will address pretty much everything else about how to become fat adapted and whether or not you're screwing it up. So here's a really good one. If you're doing some low heart rate training because you're trying to fat adapt, and so you're not taking in carbs, which means, by the way, let's address this right now. How long does it take to become fat adapted?
Okay, so
Like in general?
so being fat adapted is really like it's a lifelong thing, right? So you can, in a couple of weeks, I can change someone's metabolism in about 5 to 7 days. So if we think that can we get on the right track to becoming fat adapted, I would say give me a week to 2 weeks time. If you are ready to increase your good fat intake in your daily nutrition, and if you are going to do exercise, try to keep it pretty low intensity. Done.
Okay. So it takes 1 to 2 weeks to basically get into a fat adapted state. The longer you're in it, though, the more benefit you'll feel, is Absolutely. What I would add to that. I think after 1 week of doing it, like your body just barely starts to scratch the surface of burning fats. And then the longer you're there, the easier it is to jump back and forth between carbs and fats.
Oh, yeah.
I would think that's like a metabolic flexible kind
flexibility,
of thing.
Right? Yeah. So I was giving Ben a little bit a quick example of what it means to have metabolic flexibility. Okay, so what happens when you come in and you get a metabolic test and you're a major sugar burner, carb burner? What happens is there's never any time that you're ever utilizing fat for fuel. You go straight to carbohydrate, just like Ben said, super low heart rate. Right when you get on the bike, you're going to carbohydrate. So what we want to do with those people, it's gonna take them a little bit longer to become fat adapted because they have put such a hurt on their body, on their metabolism for so long. It's not something that's just going to change overnight. And so just know you have a little bit more of a journey to go down in order to become fat adapted. Those of you that come in and you are utilizing fat for some periods of time, like say up to, we'll go 110, 120 beats per minute. Now they're going to actually be able to become a little bit more fat adapted a little bit more quickly than a person that is a automatic sugar burner, high carbohydrate burner. Cool. And so this whole deal of metabolic flexibility, what happens is you're able to come back and forth between utilizing fat for fuel, utilizing glycogen, and then back to fat. So I gave Ben an example of, I'm sitting in the Peloton. My MEP is, let's just say that it's 150 beats per minute.
Metabolic efficiency point.
Metabolic efficiency point. So where I'm utilizing fat for fuel up to 150 beats per minute. So all of a sudden, I'm sitting there, we're cruising along, and someone attacks, and I jump out of the saddle, and I go to cover that move. Well, what happens is my heart rate spikes up to 170 beats per minute. And I get to that girl, and I'm sitting on her wheel. Well, when I spiked my heart rate, I went into my glycogen stores. And did I burn through all of them that quickly? Probably not all of them, but depending upon how hard the effort was and for how long, I may have depleted them quite a bit. So I get to that girl, and now I'm sitting on her wheel, and I'm able to bring my heart rate back down to 150. Well, what has happened is now I'm able to come back to utilizing that fat for fuel. So what I would probably do is, if on my bike at that point, if I had, say, that scratch, then maybe I would just take a drink of that Scratch Labs real quick. Maybe just one little drink. Everything that the glycogen that I had blasted through when I went to cover that attack, I replenish it. Good to go. I'm utilizing fat. We're back in. I've got my heart rate back down. I've been able to recover. And so that's I think, a pretty good picture, could paint a picture for most of you of what metabolic flexibility looks like. So being able to kind of toggle between utilizing glycogen and utilizing fat. Cool.
Yep. All right. So here's one of the questions that was posted earlier, and I think it's relatively answered just now by Anna, but let's make sure. For example, if you're doing a zone 1, zone 2 heart rate ride and you're with a group that you want to stay with, just like you were kind of describing, you can pop out of your zone 1, zone 2, and go into a higher heart rate zone, and then flop back to a lower heart rate zone, and your body will then switch back to burning.
If you are fat adapted, it will. If you're a constant sugar burner, then you're not. You're going to stay utilizing sugar the entire time. You don't have metabolic flexibility.
And I would say the longer you're fat adapted, the better you can transition between carbs.
Absolutely.
And fats,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the longer you do it, the better. So here's a practical tip. The practical tip for those of you that want to start trying to race and ride this way, is start like yesterday. I mean, like start now. Just start right now. Just one of the things you can stop doing is eating at night, and we'll talk about intermittent fasting in just a minute, but just you can start fat adapting by choosing to eat higher fats and less carbs, and choosing to do so like right now. And then ride your rides fasted, ride with just water. And if you're doing anything more than like 2 hours, then take something on board, but take like a high fat thing, like a nut butter, or we can talk about details of what that is later, because we're kind of running out of time. But take a high fat, like very low carb kind of thing with you, because whatever you do burn in that 3rd and 4th hour of your ride, and most people aren't riding consistently 4 hours every day. So let's be honest, if this is your weekend ride and you're wanting to try fat adapted, just hit the carbs up in the like last part of the 2nd and first part of the 3rd hour, I would suggest, and just and be careful with how many you take, because you only can burn so many of them anyways, especially if it was a lower heart rate ride. And then the other practical tip is when you start this, just know you might feel like total butt.
Absolutely.
At first, you're going to feel like you've got zero energy. You're going to feel like, what's happening? Your body's transitioning, and it's used to donuts. It's used to cookies.
Sugar.
It's used to Lucky Charms, or whatever it is that you're doing. I totally love Lucky Charms.
Oh, right? Gross.
But it's used to all of those things, and so you're telling it to look for its own stored fat and not,
So in the beginning, you'll have a bit of maybe even brain fog. You'll feel that your performance, oh my gosh, my performance is decreasing. Don't worry. It will come back. It will come back. You have to buy in, and just know it's almost like your body's going through a bit of a detox phase. We typically call it our pre-phase. We give everyone, when they come in, we give them a 2-week pre-phase in order to get their bodies to start to adjust. And adapt to kind of this, it's a lifestyle change. We want them to start utilizing more of their internal fat stores. We are going to pull a lot of that refined grain and carbohydrate out of their daily nutrition. And I'll tell you what, the benefits, just like Ben listed off, they come. It may take a week. And sometimes it may even take 2 weeks, depending upon the state that you were in. So always keep your expectations
right.
Don't think that all of a sudden, if you have put the hurt on your body for 30 years, that it's going to change. Everything's going to change and be just all hunky dory in 1 week. It doesn't really work that way, but you've got to start. You got to start going. So.
All right. So what do? You flip back and forth. The longer you're fat adapted, the easier you can flip back and forth. Okay. On those group rides. How do I know when I'm doing this that I'm not just starving my body and my body ends up breaking down muscles instead of fat for fuel? Right? Because we've all had those experiences where we might have mismanaged nutrition, particularly some of us that have a triathlon background. So we're doing like 12 to 17-hour days, like trying to crank through these full-length Ironmans. At the end of the day, we start peeing brown. Right?
Yeah.
Like we obviously mismanaged some stuff. Our kidneys and our liver is screaming, and we're breaking down muscle, and we're peeing, brown.
And that typically takes quite a long time. So most of your cycling, you cyclists out there, you're not, you probably won't get yourself into that state anyway. You won't be out there long enough that you would. But like you're saying, going 14, 15 hours, definitely. But that would be you essentially starving yourself the entire time and not taking in anything at all, right?
And you probably didn't take enough hydration, I would say too.
Well, if you're peeing brown, absolutely. Yeah.
But how do you know, in general, if you're going to be fat adapted athlete, how do you know that you're not breaking down muscle? So some of us are skinny enough. I'm not one of them, but there are some of us that are worried, like we don't want to lose any of the muscle that we have.
Yeah, you're not going to. You're going to be able to utilize those internal fat stores, right? And like I said, you could go days and days without eating and be totally fine. You could go days and days if you're out there at lower intensities, and you would be fine. It's going to take a lot for you to be able to tap into muscle for fuel.
So,
your body's not going to select that muscle.
So to be clear, if your nutrition is dialed in, first of all, you've been tested, met tested, so you know what your stuff specifically is for your body.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go, and it's not like this huge complicated thing to understand, by the way. So if you know what your particular body is and you've got your nutrition dialed in, then when you're fat adapted, the basic principle, I guess, from a scientific point of view is when you're fat adapted, that's exactly what you're doing, is you're burning fat, not muscle, not carbs, not protein, for example. Your body assimilates all of that, but it's tapping fat for fuel.
Right.
So that's
and one of the questions I think too is, how do you know if you are fat adapted? And so come in and get tested. One, I can tell you if you're fat adapted straight away within the first 5 minutes of the test. But you can ask yourself a couple simple questions too. Are you hungry all the time? And if you answer yes, then you're not fat adapted. Because when you do become fat adapted, you won't feel hungry. You won't feel hungry that often. It really it kind of is like, oh, I need to eat. And then another question, maybe you could ask yourself can you go 3 hours or more without eating? And if the answer is yes, then you're probably fat adapted. Again, coming back to the kind of that brain fog and maybe those headaches, if those have subsided, then probably moving into more of a fat adapted state. So those are a couple questions that you can ask yourself.
Yeah, go do a 6-hour ride fasted on just water. Yeah. See how you feel. Are you fat adapted or not? Did you bonk at hour 3 and call Uber or not?
I don't know if I would go for 6 hours, but you could.
Hey, put it to the test.
But I would always make sure too that you have something on board, something in your pocket, just in case. You don't want to get out there and you're trying this out and all of a sudden that's
what Uber's for.
You black out and now Another thing to remember too is when you are taking carbohydrates out of your daily nutrition, you need to make sure that you are, 1, consuming a lot of water, and 2, salting your food. You get a lot of salt from carbohydrate and you get a lot of water from carbohydrate. So think about it, carbohydrate. When you're taking those carbohydrates out, then you're also not getting the water from the food that you're eating. And so you need to make sure that you are replenishing and making sure you're taking in almost extra water too, since you're not getting it from your food. And make sure also that you're salting your food too. Don't be afraid of salt. Salt is good for you. Salt your food.
I love salt.
Me too.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Do you have to purge your body of carbs before you start burning fat?
Well,
yes, do.
Absolutely. And that's that pre-phase that we were talking about. So you essentially pull all of that sugar. It's almost like that detox phase that you go through, pull all of that sugar, refined carbohydrate out. And then now your body is more prepped and ready to be able to liberate those fat stores.
Yep.
What else you got? Hit me with another.
I love it. If I'm doing just an easy 1 to 1.5 hour ride one morning on the trainer, does that have any benefit toward fat adapting? Or does it have to be a long ride to have to burn through your glycogen stores? In other words, do you have to burn through your glycogen stores before you can start fat adapting?
No. So the thing is that don't even worry about the exercise there. Think about your daily nutrition being higher in fat, and that's what's going to help you get to become fat adapted much more quickly than anything you could ever do exercise wise. If you're going out for an hour and a half, don't eat. Unless you're going to do something that is super high intensity. But even at an hour and a half, you have enough glycogen stored that you can utilize during that hour and a half that you do when you get home? Give me another.
Give
Is
me
that
another.
it?
Hit me up.
Is that it?
Hit me up, boss. No, man, we got more.
Ah.
If I go through a period of fat adapting and then reintroduce carbs, this is another one of those metabolic flexibility questions. Is that what you call it?
Metabolic flexibility. Yeah.
I got it. I'm down. Am I going to gain weight quickly, even quicker than I normally would have had I not attempted fat adapting?
Okay.
In other words, can I sustain this for a long-term thing, or am I going to totally screw up my metabolism by trying this new fat adaptation thing out?
This fat adaptation thing needs to be your way of life forever. It's not a diet. It's not something that you are just going to do here and there. It's something that your body is going to feel so good. Your performance is going to increase that you will never want to be without it. You will always want to stay in a state of being fat adapted. And so don't look at it like this is just some kind of quick fix. You always want to be fat adapted. So think about this as a lifestyle.
Yeah. And so I got to tell you that whenever I hear that this is something you have to do for life, I just like totally tune out and get angry, because I feel like every diet is saying that. Like, you suck as a person. You've made such bad decisions. I know you're not saying this, that you need to now no longer eat donuts and ice cream, you fat piece of crap. Instead, you need to like change your whole life and be this way. Now, that being said, that's how I usually experience that statement, especially when it's nutrition advice related. I don't feel that way with fat adapting.
So what happens is you're now able to have that self-evaluation. Once you pull all of those refined grains and sugars out, and then you begin to reintroduce here and there, what you find is that your body doesn't feel good anymore with it. So you begin to, because carbohydrates are going to bring a lot of inflammation in. Here's an example. My mom and dad. My mom has osteoarthritis. Her knuckles are huge. They hurt really, really bad. And so she and my father came in. We did all of their testing. I put them on our nutrition plan, and we pulled all of their refined grains and carbohydrate out. Not only did she lose 10 pounds, but also she came to visit me 1 month later, and she said, Anna, my knuckles don't hurt anymore. And I was like, Mom, do you realize that it's because of the diet? And I shouldn't even ever call it a diet. It's a healthy way of living, a healthy eating plan. It's all because you pulled out that refined grains and carbohydrate. So that later on that day, she said, let's go down the street to coffee and bagels. I'm going to get a bagel. And I want a bagel with cream cheese. And I go, okay, that's fine. And she goes, are you going to judge me? And I go, no, not at all. If that's what you want, that's what you should have. So we went down, we got that bagel, cream cheese. She hasn't had any refined grains or sugars for a month now. And we get home, and within 20 minutes, she says, Anna, my knuckles hurt. She hadn't had any pain at all. The moment she introduced that bagel in with the gluten and the refined grains, carbohydrate, all of a sudden inflammation right back into her knuckles. Plus she was like, I don't feel good. I feel very bloated. So what you'll begin to do is you'll begin to be able to evaluate, I don't want to feel bad, so I'm not going to eat that. I'm not going to choose that donut because I know that donut's not going to make me feel good. And 2, it's going to make my performance go down. So if you're looking at this healthy way of eating for performance gains alone, just know that your performance will go down when you start having all of those refined grains and carbohydrate.
Yeah, so that's what I was kind of saying. Is like I usually hear that statement about you have to change this is it. This is how you have to live forever, as being too restrictive and like really scary. But I don't feel fat adaptation is not a diet. It's not it's not a let's go buy this like fat adaptation for dummies book and it gives me a few recipes and some sort of plan that says this is how you should eat the rest of your life. It's literally just an awareness of what my body needs and then giving it that.
Yep.
And so it feels good. I perform better. I live better. It's just for sure something that I enjoy. So a couple more questions and we'll wrap up with intermittent fasting. And by intermittent fasting, like 2-3 minute discussion is all. we'll dangle that carrot out there. We'll probably have another session with intermittent fasting. Yeah, if I train in a fat adapted state as much as possible, then I have a long race where I want to do really well. And I know I'm going to be out of zone 2 for most of the race. So right there is an interesting question, because if it's a really long race, what are you doing out of zone 2 for most of the race? Probably not. You're probably not going to do really well if you're out of zone 2 for too much of it. Just need to make sure your zone 2 is wicked fast. That's what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anyways. Will ingesting carbs benefit me the same way it did before I was fat adapted? In other words, I'm worried my body won't know what to do with them because I'm fat adapted. So if you're fat adapted and you take a few carbs in, do the carbs feel like total crack, like a super boost to you?
It doesn't necessarily to me, but does it to you? Have you had that experience?
Yeah, when it's something like
Carbo rocket. Oh god, here we go.
When it's Carbo Rocket, I do, just because it's
because it has caffeine in it.
No, there's non-caffeinated kind too.
Oh, what do you do though?
I do the non-caffeinated kind.
Really?
Yeah, I do both, but
okay.
In this example, it was actually the non-caffeinated, with it was the recovery mix, so it was half the carbs, or a third of the carbs actually, of the normal mix plus protein in it. So higher fat, higher protein, lower carb.
How did it make you feel?
Rocket. Yeah, so that's the question I'd like to answer, I guess, is for me, most of the time, if I have a few carbs here or there, it does not feel like all of a sudden I'm hopped up on something like, yeah, I got this advantage, I got carbs. Like, it doesn't feel that way. If anything, it just feels like I sluggishly put something into my fuel system that I don't really like. But if it's a long, intense day, like let's take Loaded Jaw, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Longest 1-day race in the country, right? Or at least USAC sanctioned 1-day race, 200 miles. And yeah, if you're trying to do really well, like you're not just trying to survive to the end, you're going to be crushing a pretty decent intensity for like 9-10 hours, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Carbo Rocket feels good on a day like that.
Yeah.
Not for the whole day, but for part of that day.
I would say that you're probably going to, if you have that metabolic flexibility, the whole day, if you won't be maxed that entire time. So again, possibly trying some of that that sustained, and then using scratch, or maybe I don't know. I never want to say that I'm going to promote Carbo Rocket, but maybe if you really want to dilute it down quite a bit, you could have a bottle of that. You could have a bottle of that on your bike as well. But your body will react to it. Is it going to feel like euphoria? Probably not.
It never did for me. It didn't really feel like euphoria for me.
But your body will like that. Probably like that glucose a little bit. So.
Yeah. And I'll address that here in just a second. Or actually, you probably should, but I'll introduce you to in a minute. But yeah, so I will say this though, with fat adapting, one of the other bonuses is if you start this transition of fat adapting while you also simultaneously work on like your zone 1, zone 2 intensity, like base mile kind of mileage, you won't feel as bad during the transition process, because your body doesn't need the carbs to do some high intense workout, some big group ride where you're trying not to get dropped. You're just out there doing your zone 1, zone 2 base miles. So it doesn't matter how fast you're going. You're just basically spinning your legs at a lower intensity. The fat adaptation there is a little easier, I think, to accomplish, because you're not constantly hitting walls of dropped and races and so forth. And
it's all about periodization, right? So you have that periodization model of training, but you also need to have the daily nutrition periodization model in there as well. So your nutrition and your training need to be like one. We need to come in and out of these.
Yeah, so that's where I was cycles. That's where I was going with that. When I did the low heart rate training in connection with fat adapting, what I noticed is not only did I become fat adapted, but my zone 1, zone 2
opened up. Yeah, like, big time.
Really opened up. So for a guy like me, I can go to a Loaded Jaw right now, and not right now because my shoulder's broken, but whatever. Like when I can go to Loaded Jaw.
Yeah.
It is a zone 2 day for me.
Yeah.
Like, I'll most likely be in zone 2 the entire day.
It's awesome.
And that's just because my zone 2 goes so high. Like I can afford to
But
being
then if
zoned
you
through.
had a little metabolic flexibility and all of a sudden say that you're getting very to the top of a climb and you've got to give it a little bit more gas because someone is attacking or someone's trying to roll away, you can go into those glycogen stores, you can increase that heart rate, and then you can bring it right back down.
So while we're on that topic, let's show this really quick.
You know, I think with because I know we wanted to, oh, there you go. Okay, so
Let's explain, let's show the screen and then let's explain what the numbers look like. This is the test. So this is the test results that you see on the screen. This is the test results of my most recent metabolic testing back in March. So this would be like a month and a half ago.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead and start. Let's talk to them about MEP really quick.
And we're gonna try and do this as quickly as we can.
Super quick. And actually, I think that the whole intermittent fasting, I can come back and we can talk even more about that later. But the main thing with intermittent fasting that I just want everyone to focus on is pick an hour of the day to stop eating by. Just doing that, you will be on your way to starting to do intermittent fasting. I'll just leave it at that.
And the short story there, intermittent fasting is basically only eating the amount of calories we're about to show you here that my body needs. It's intermittent fasting doesn't mean that you don't eat those. It just means that you get all of that nutrition in during a certain window of time.
Yep, during a window of time.
And the easiest way to crack that code is to just ease into intermittent fasting, is what she's saying. And by picking a time at night like 8, 6, 7, 7:30, 7:42 if you're OCD.
There you go.
Like,
yeah.
Who cares?
Absolutely.
Pick a time and say, that's my time. That's it. After that, it's water for me and I'm going to bed. So anyways, that's how you can start into that. But let's do
scroll.
And this test that we're going to show you, how much does not a team deal? Like what is Sparks Systems?
If you come in and you do what we have is our comprehensive package, and our comprehensive package includes a resting metabolic test to determine your resting and energy expenditure, an active metabolic test, which would be on your bike or on the treadmill or both, depending upon if you're a triathlete. You get a consult with our registered dietitian who will put together a meal plan for you based off of your metabolic data. And that whole package, that comprehensive package, is $375.
Yeah, and there are different levels and different packages, and I have the website posted in the answers here so that you can go and check that out later. And
you guys just reach out too, and let's talk and see what your needs are.
You can contact Anna anytime. Okay. Yeah. Now that being said, let's look at.
Let's show your MEP really quick. Just go to the last page for me, and let's do this because this will be really, really fun. Okay. So when we were talking about that metabolic efficiency point, can you use your pointer here, Ben?
Yeah. Here.
Okay.
You can't see the mouse is there.
So Ben's metabolic efficiency point is.
Let me put it on. Hold on. Let me put it on.
Pointer.
No, pin. Now you can like mark stuff if you want.
Okay, so you see that this blue line along the top represents fat, okay? This dotted red line along the bottom represents carbohydrate.
Okay, keep talking. So I'm gonna do the technical stuff for her while she does this. Oops.
Oh gosh, look at that. What is
Kevin,
what just happened there?
Sorry, I'm gonna start over on that.
Oh god, technical.
Yeah.
So if you can see through that, through the green, God, what just happened there? Okay, there we go. Okay, so the point in which those two intersect, the blue and the red, where they intersect, that is what is called your MEP, or your metabolic efficiency point. That is the point where you're utilizing equal amounts of both fat and carbohydrate. So before that, as you can see, Ben's utilizing some fat and some carbohydrate. But since the fat line, the blue line, is up on the top, he's mainly utilizing fat for fuel. And so when he hits 100, Ben's metabolic efficiency point is about 169 beats per minute, which means he's utilizing fat. Majority of his calories are coming from fat up until 169 beats per minute. That's incredible. It's great. But you can see after 169, you can see that carbohydrate starts going through the roof. So that's him using those glycogen stores, right? And fat drops off. Makes sense.
Yeah, it drops down.
So then we come down here and we look at, okay, if he is utilizing right around, we'll look at 170 beats per minute, right? So at 170 beats per minute, if Ben was to go out and train for 1 hour at 170, he would utilize 476 calories from fat and 533 calories from carbohydrate. So now Ben knows after that ride, he knows exactly what he needs to replenish with.
Or if it's a longer ride, I can know just by memorizing some of this data or just getting familiar with it at least, I can know how much I should be taking in. So for example,
but you're not going to be on the bike. You're not going to try to always stay up with that amount because your body can't process.
Yeah. So calorie for calorie, how much can a body absorb in an hour?
It depends on your body size and weight and all of that. But just know that if we're getting anywhere around like 10 to 30% of this in on the bike, that we're doing good.
Okay.
All
right. So essentially let's go high, shoot for 30%. So 30% of 533, dude, I do not do math, but that's roughly 150. Okay, give or take. So I have to do about 150 calories from carbs an hour. 150, guys. And that's only if I kept 170 beats per minute, so which for me is pretty doable, but but
for a lot of people, that's an extremely high heart. For me, that would be an extremely high heart rate.
Yeah, that's what's nice. Yeah, so my rides, I can hang out in the 150s and 160s for most of my rides, which means, look, I don't have to take in hardly any carb during the day. That's the whole point. So the whole point is in terms of replenishing, I've got a ton in my liver and muscle storage anyways. I don't really have to replenish a lot. If it's going to be a 15-hour day, and some of my days
then definitely
then I'm going to have to stay on top of that, because in fact I'm going to replenish from hour number one, because I know 12 hours later, like I'm going to hurt if I don't start replenishing
Get yourself in that deficit. Right.
So that's metabolic efficiency. Is there anything else you want to show them on the test results?
I love that. I think that we're good. Wow, we've been here for an hour and a half.
Yeah. Let's wrap up. Let's for sure wrap this up. Super grateful for you coming out.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And let's do it again. And I know we didn't get to touch on the difference between being fat adapted and being on a ketogenic diet or being in what we call nutritional ketosis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send my registered dietitian back in here to do the next podcast with you and go over the difference between ketogenic and fat adaptation. Cool.
I love it, guys.
Cool.
Yeah. If you have any other questions, feel free to post up. You can check either of our Facebook pages. You probably have my phone number, or you can email either of us. There'll also be a link posted tomorrow, probably with the materials. The PDFs are available to everyone who's registered, and they'll be available on my website, as well as a YouTube link for this, so that you guys can check it out. But we'll look forward to it. And thanks for those of you that sent us questions. Actually, it was really helpful to get some of those questions beforehand.
I love this. I want to come back.
Yeah, loved it.
Let's do it again. Woo woo. Cool.
Okay.
1, 2, 3 team.
Thanks, guys.
Hello. Nanu.
Did you just do a nanu?
Like the Morgan Mindy.
Yeah. Hey, look at that. They're all there.
Okay.
Starting to say it works. Okay. Thanks, guys. Okay. Well, then let's get rolling. I know. Well, actually, let's give it just like 60 more seconds. Looks like there's a really decent chunk of you out there, but there's quite a few more people signing on, like literally as we talk. So we're just going to give it 60 more seconds. Hang out. Enjoy.
Yeah. Relax. Maybe do some belly breathing.
I feel like that's a fat joke. Why can't you say flat stomach
So that you can
breathing?
just touching your belly. Kind of like the Buddha, right?
Yeah.
Rub that belly. Yeah. Deep breaths. Kind of like Deep Thoughts by Jack Handy.
Deep Thoughts by Jack Handy. Can you guys see us too? Or just our like screen? If you can type on the right hand side, that'd be awesome. Like Matt Woods, Brian Coy. Okay, good. Thanks. You can see us too. All right, good. All right, so just maybe like literally 1 more minute is all, and then we'll start, guys. And I'll put this like right there, so that way when we naturally try and look at ourselves, we'll actually look at the camera.
What are you trying to say? I'm short.
No, I just keep seeing you look at yourself.
I don't know. Where am I supposed to look? Where are you looking?
Anna likes to look at herself.
I really don't. It's just right in front of my face.
Yeah, I saw it. I swear.
Okay.
She's looking at herself.
I'm not gonna look at myself anymore. Done.
All right, guys.